Shana Tova, everyone. Good to be with you. And just before I start my formal words, just thank you for everyone for reaching out, both with food, although I know I shouldn't be mentioning that now on Yom Kippur, but with food for us while we were a little bit under the weather, and your kind notes. It really meant a lot to us. So thank you for that from the bottom of our hearts. So 5 weeks ago, we dropped Aria off for her first day of school at Epstein. And it's crazy to me to think about that it's already been 5 weeks. Man, do you all start school early here in Georgia? And as I was standing there in front of the house taking the obligatory first day of school photos, and as April and I were driving to drop her off, while admittedly holding back some tears, several thoughts were rushing through my mind. And as I watched Aria walk away from the car, I asked myself first, and then audibly to April, who will Aria be? Who will she be this year and for years to come? What are the experiences that she will have that will help to define her? Where will she find her new place among her friends at school and in all of her other activities? And now, over the previous weeks, I realized I needed to alter my perspective on these questions. I needed to not only direct them towards my daughter, but in truth, I needed to look at myself as well, as I too am going through a major transition just as she is. And I need to ask, who will I be? What are the moments that will help to define me as a person, and what place will I make for myself over the course of this year? And as I reflect back on my journey, the journey that has now led me to be standing here before you all as we start Yom Kippur, I realized I had to struggle with defining who I was, often seeking for a sense of belonging and desiring to find my place in the world. And I came to realize that there were these key experiences in my life that have helped make me who I am as a son, a brother, husband, father, and as a rabbi. And therefore, I want to share with you all several key defining personal moments in my life, experiences that will guide me on my road to finding my place and my voice in this coming year. And considering the type of 18 months we have had since the breakout of the pandemic, it seems pertinent that we all think about what this year will be for each of us. Milestone number 1, my bar mitzvah. Thanksgiving weekend 21 years ago, I stood before my community in St. Louis and became a bar mitzvah. And the power and weight of being a Jewish adult did not hit me until several months later. It was a Sunday morning, and my father had an unveiling for a member of the community. Their family was concerned that there would not be enough people in order for them to recite Kaddish graveside. And so I offered to go with my father to provide reinforcements. It happened that I was the 10th person in attendance. And had I not been there, they would not have been able to say Kaddish. And after the brief ceremony, the family came over to me, and they were extremely gracious and appreciative that I had agreed to show up, even though I had no real relationship to them. And I realized in that moment I had a community, and I had found my place that day. And I really discovered my responsibility to others from a Jewish communal lens, the same responsibility that each and every one of us has to each other here in this sanctuary or watching at home. Milestone number 2, high school. When I entered high school, I had all the typical aspects of trying to find my place. But on top of all the typical high school drama, I was confronted with a new dilemma: the balancing of my public high school career and my religious observance. Growing up, I had heard, honestly, the horror stories of my sister's high school experience. And it was because it was very limited because of our religious observance. However, my father allowed me to have a different experience. We came to an agreement that he would allow me to explore the balancing act of being Jewish and being fully involved in high school life. So I had to explore what type of Jew I wanted to be, how I would keep my spiritual growth moving forward while still playing football, which occurred on Friday or Saturday, or take part in choir or business competitions that I had to drive to on Shabbat. And now I was faced with navigating my own level of kashrut in a public high school cafeteria. And while this freedom could have derailed my own personal religious expression, I found that it actually did the opposite. I became more connected to my Judaism. It pushed me to create ways for other Jews in my high school to find a place where they could connect to their faith and still be a typical high schooler. And going through this made me realize how important my Judaism was to me, and it allowed me to flourish and grow as a young Jewish teen. I found my place, and I was comfortable with my Judaism. Milestone number 3, rabbinical school. While in rabbinical school, I searched again for a sense of belonging. I was looking for my new place in a foreign community of Los Angeles and was trying to define myself in this stage of life. I started, actually, by attending an Orthodox congregation with my now ex-wife. But while I sat on my side of the mechitza, I knew it was not for me. And then after my divorce, I began to question, what do I want to be? Where do I belong? And what would I do next? And I came to realize I needed to try on new experiences with the hope that it would help me define who I would be after this major moment in my life. So I went through some changes. Changed the neighborhood I lived in. Changed the type of services I went to. And explored different offerings from various synagogues. I went to large congregations, small congregations, Reform, Conservative, Modern Orthodox, and even Sephardic. And I explored other ways to connect to my Judaism through spiritual experiences like nature walks, intermingling prayer with my workout routine, just to name a few. And through this journeying, I discovered who I was supposed to be. I was meant to be in a conservative congregation, be part of this community, and be a conservative rabbi. I found my place. And I realized it was the wrestling, an act of trying on new aspects of my Judaism that allowed me to grow and flourish in our tradition. And I found the aspects that were most meaningful to me. Going through these soul-searching actions, attempting to define ourselves and who we want to be, is a Jewish process. The Torah is filled with different examples of people searching for who they will be, going on journeys of reflection, and trying to define themselves. Abraham, our chief patriarch, is told in chapter 12 of Bereshit, Vayomer Adonai al Avram, Lech lecha. The Lord said to Avram, go forth from your native land and from your father's house to the land that I will show you. This physical journey serves as a foreshadowing for his own personal journey he will go through in searching for his connection and relationship to God. He will seek to define himself and his place in the world. And we can see one such example of this with Abraham when he is told about Sodom and Gomorrah. He is told it is so terrible and that God will therefore destroy it. And Abraham has a moment to decide who he will be. What will his place be in this destruction? Will he be complacent, or will he hold God accountable for the action that God is about to carry out? Upon a hearing of the Lord's plan to wipe out the entire city, Abraham pleads. He begs, for the sake of 50 righteous good people, will you not destroy it? And God agrees. Then he asks on account of 45, and God agrees. And then 40, and God agrees. And this continues until Abraham gets to just 10 people. And God agrees for the sake of 10 people that God will not destroy the city. Now, we know the city is ultimately destroyed, but Abraham decided who he was going to be. He decided to be somebody to stand up for others and to think about attempting to make the world more just. Another example comes from Moses, another principal figure in our tradition. And he had his own defining moment as well, identifying who he wanted to be. The action that sets Moses on the journey to encountering God at the burning bush is when he goes out to his brethren and saw an Egyptian taskmaster beating a Hebrew slave. and then he strikes the Egyptian, killing him. Prior to Moshe springing into action, we are told in verse 12 of chapter 2 of Exodus, Vayifen ko vecho. He turned this way and that way. He turned this way and that way, and seeing no one about, he struck down the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. The surface level or basic reading of this line could be that he was looking to see if he had the all clear before striking the Egyptian. However, I think we can read it with a more midrashic or interpretive lens. To me, he did this as a way of looking at his two options. He turned this way and that way. He turned looking at what his life had been living amongst the Egyptians and in the house of the Pharaoh. And then he looked that way and saw how he could change. He could be among his true brethren, the Israelites, finding his place among them and doing what would lead God to ultimately choosing him to be the Redeemer of the Israelites. And we know that he chose the latter. Now, as I said, struggling to find our place, our identity, and wrestling with defining ourselves is a Jewish process. Our people, as we know, are named after Jacob, later renamed Israel, meaning one who wrestles with God. Wrestling with who we are is something we must do. It is part of our identity. And now, as I look back at that experience of dropping Aria off at her first day of school, I realize we are both in the same situation. We are searching. As a matter of fact, every single one of us is searching as we are, God willing, coming out of this pandemic in the near future. We are searching for what our lives will look like this year. We are searching for what our religious and shul life will be as we continue to navigate the bumpy road that is COVID. And I stand here before you today as we begin Yom Kippur, and I ask myself, who will I be this year? What are the things that will define me as I try to find my place here? Who will I be as an American, as a Jew, a father, a husband, son, and as your rabbi? And I hope you will go through this process with me. Of course, in your roles as a parent, spouse, or child, but I really want to invite you to think about your role in this community. What are the experiences, the moments, the action that will define your year here at Eitz Chaim? Which experiences will you try on for the new year? Which will you use as a way to deepen your connection to each other, to your clergy, and most importantly, to the divine? And I also want you to think of this fantastic remodel building that we are all in here today, physically or seen virtually from home. And I want you to think about all the different doors that can lead you into this building. You can enter through the chapel, through the front of the building, through the education wing, or several other doors. And just as we have so many physical entries into our building, so do we have just as many metaphorical entry points into this community. The question is, what door will you walk through to experience our community this year? You can get involved with Eitz Chaim through social action initiatives, adult and childhood education, our auxiliary groups, holiday programs, daily minyan, and Shabbat Lekulam, our new Shabbat initiative that will allow people to connect to our community in different ways with guest speakers, classes, and other spiritual experiences. Our job as a synagogue is to provide you with these opportunities, to deepen your knowledge, your spiritual connection, and your personal circle of chevre, or friends. That is what we are supposed to do, and that is what we love to do. But no matter how many times we invite you, or plan an event, or create a learning opportunity, only you can decide if you will attend. Only you can control your own growth. And only you can search for, find, and realize your place here at Eitz Chaim. The question you must ask yourself is, will you take advantage of it? Will you take the steps towards finding your place in our community in a new, meaningful, and regular way, whether in person or virtually? And while that is a question that only you can answer, I want to assure you, I will be here. We as an entire professional staff will be here for you. And I hope that each of you will give us the chance to walk with you on your own personal Jewish journey, Allow us the opportunity to sit with you, learn with you, mourn with you, celebrate with you, and to laugh with you. I look forward to this coming year. I look forward to the experience of growing together in our collective journey of finding our place here at Eitz Chaim, our collective spiritual home. Gamar Chatima Tova, and may we all have a year filled with joy, blessing, peace, and most importantly, health. Shana Tova.